Thank you. Welcome, everybody, to House General and Housing. It's Wednesday, February 26th, 2025. We are going to, at this point, discuss a draft letter to the Appropriations Committee. Every committee in the House owes the Appropriations Committee a letter if they have anything that is relevant to appropriations. And the letter that they request is that we in some way indicate relative importance. The reason being that they feel like we're kind of more subject matter experts than they are. They'd rather know what we think, however hard or difficult it is, than just tell them, oh, we want it all. A couple of things about the letter. We're just waiting for the printed copies. The letter attempts to set out pretty much everything that we have considered that could be in our bill that has an appropriation attached to it, and things that aren't in our bill, but we've talked about, but that are in an appropriation of some sort. For example, our bill is just a housing bill, but there are two non-housing issues that are in our bill. I mean, not in a bill, but they come under a Human Rights Commission, the Land Access Opportunity Board.
Take a water. Oh, it's sick.
So this is the exact letter that I sent out to everybody on Sunday. It's posted on our website. The approach I took was I divided it into housing and other. The others at the end, it's just the Land Access Opportunity Board and the Human Rights Commission. But the housing, what I tried to do here was rather than rank everything, I decided to put them into tiers and make it clear that within each tier, we think all of the things are important. And the way the system I use in order to decide which tier to put things is this. I put in the first tier things that directly go to the construction of housing. And that's why you see the obvious things in there: VHCB, VHFA, the bond bank, that's infrastructure, and VHIP. They're in there. The second priority, they're important programs that produce housing or produce construction trades. And by the way, it's not complete because it doesn't have your proposal in there, but I would put it there. And there I put, for example, I mean, you can see these are important, but I just don't think they're quite as directly important. One is the manufactured home improvement, the recovery housing, VHFA modular program that we discussed, the FTE, and the VSC program for expansion of building trades. That I would put, you know how I put other trades there? It's because I knew Tom was working on something. Tom, what can I put here? Just
448, 500.
38. So it would be $800,000 total, and it includes what is it? The Vermont?
State colleges.
No, but the other one.
Oh, the Associated General Contractors.
Through what? Department of Labor?
Department of Labor.
I'll tell you my thinking there. I mean, believe me, this is not rocket science, everybody. And of course, appropriations will do, they're going to do what they want to do and what they, but I just thought I put programs in this second priority, programs that produce housing a little less directly, but also the trades thing, because we kept hearing from contractors that if we don't do the trades, if we don't try to do something for the trades, however little this is, we're not gonna get anywhere. So I just put that in the second tier. The third priority is everything else. By the way, my VHFA, if you go down 3 of the third priority, you can scratch VHF, the modular, it's up above. The one I wondered about, the one I wondered about, just to confess, when I listened to the Home Share Vermont today, what struck me was how many of those are low-income units, essentially. Did you, 90%?
Yeah.
Of the people are getting, and they're getting these perfect sized to their needs. And it just made sense to me that it's really indirectly a housing it's really like building housing in a way. So I might be inclined to move it. I never thought I would do this, but up into tier 2. Up into tier 2. I mean, that's it. And I did do, if you look at governments other than housing, I put the Human Rights Commission. I don't know if they're gonna get 6 FTE. We supported 2 FTE in the BAA. I don't know if they're in there and they came up through the Senate. I just don't know.
They're cut.
They're what?
They're cut from the Senate.
They were cut from the Senate. So it's 6. And the Land Access Opportunity Board, the only thing I would add besides some numbers is the how for everything else, I put the administration. The administration's giving them 1.6 million. I did not, at the very last line on the
So the
second
land
page.
action.
The administration's giving them, I went through the budget, I found 1.632 million. I didn't find any allocation to them at all from the cannabis fund. I think the budget just takes everything from the cannabis fund, dumps it in the general fund, but I'm not sure. So anyway, I do want to emphasize, one very other important thing. The number originally that I had for VHCB was 35 million. They've spent like 40 million extra beyond their base every year for years, and more than that. One year, a lot more. And we had testimony that they can essentially take whatever we can give. Well, it's not up to us. And then the administration's proposing 30 million bucks for the 2 middle income funds from VHCB at HFA. I swear. Anyway, I was talking to Robin and Tiff, and what I got the strong impression, and this is just an impression. I said, look, you want us to ask for the sky or do you want us to cut things down? And she said, credibility says cut things down. So what I did is I just reduced them both by 10 million bucks. I don't think it matters what we say. I think they're going to work on what they can work. But I think what we're saying is, I think what we're really saying is both of these are important. We're putting them in tier 1, etc. Anyway, I've now said my 2 pieces. Please help me. I'm proposing that we all talk about it, and I can make little changes on here, and then you just all trust me, and I'll make changes and I'll get the letter.
Do we have a final one? I mean, we change things, it's gonna change. The final would be, we have the addition for the.
Do I have what?
Sorry, I'm just completely blanking for a sec.
Do I have a final?
I'm just draw a line at the bottom and see what was in the budget versus what's in our
Yeah,
proposal.
it's 25 million bucks.
25 million.
In other words, it's roughly 25 million. We're proposing an additional 25 million bucks that wasn't in the legislative.
25, there's 10. 6. Okay, 5 million. Which is basically the vehicle,
Or should be. No, it's the.
or the VHTB, sorry, yeah.
Giving VHCB, they wanted $4 million for VIA plus a position. We're giving them what they asked for.
Yep.
They wanted VHFA. I can't believe I continue to mess that up. Also, they were giving VHFA the module program they wanted, and we're giving them manufactured home improvement. I didn't make any cuts in those.
Yep.
It just are what they are.
Yes, question?
Well, I just had a comment about the home share Vermont, because we also have an issue with childcare. And they were, you live in a big enough house and you have an extra room. It's like, he was using it for assisting with childcare, whether it's an hour in the morning, hour, after school, whatever the schedule works out to be. So it's almost like you serve two issues with that home share.
And I would just add to that, the fact that when I worked at Home Share Vermont, so many of the people who walked in to the office had, moved here to study or, moved here like thinking, oh, I'll find an apartment, and it was just impossible. And then they happened to read about this home share program, on a flyer at a grocery store, and just love the idea of helping out somebody, remain age in place. And I think that this is a really important way of doing exactly what our goals are, like allowing people to stay off of needing services, very expensive things like and growing our housing for people that are in the workforce and can't afford the housing and be in our workforce.
Can anyone remind, I'm just trying to think, one of the things, you notice how this is very short. In other words, it's just a line. They told me, don't worry about, explaining everything now, just get that to us. So I can get the detail to them in the form of our bill, which has language. But I do like to just put a line. I have Home Share Vermont to expand into the kingdom and what was it?
Wyndham, Windsor.
Okay.
Yay. Good program.
I'm also here, there's Jerma Holly, you had said, right now it's in tier 3, which is third priority,
Mhm.
but it sounds like you would like to see it move up, and I think everyone at the table,
Well, it's
while
meeting in
I'm
the
making
meeting.
assumptions,
Yeah,
but we can all, I think we can.
okay, I'll move it to tier 2.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. And
Um,
I wasn't aware of how many low-income housing units are essentially produced by.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, in my district, I have a lot of seniors and many of them, have folks come in and stay with them, and it's a wonderful, well, we all heard the testimony, a wonderful connection and just really a great program. So, this looks good. Okay, Sash is,
Sash, I just bundled, it's 400,000. I just bundled into resident services program,
okay.
but I called it out.
Yeah, right, I see that, okay. Yeah, that's really important, to me.
Just so you know, I didn't put. It's a pilot program. All the 400,000, I mean, it's so sad, all the things we can't do.
I know.
It's 400,000 maintains the
Right.
pilot program.
Right,
2 million would increase it, and I just didn't put it in.
but I'm grateful that we have it in there because as we continue to move forward, keeping it going and it's really important. And I've seen great successes with that program, so I'm grateful that it's in there. Thank you.
Did you I thought you said you took out the two, but it does say 2.4.
Right, it's resident services, it's 400,000 is
Oh,
sales.
gosh, we could have had
We
four
could have
point
had
four.
well, 4, yeah,
Yeah.
I do.
And the pilot is
3,
3.
the pilot, the Sash pilots,
Introduce yourself.
I'm sorry, I'm Molly Dugan with Cathedral Square. I'm just not sure what the question is about.
the Sash pilot is,
Sash for All, and it's down in the greater Brattleboro area. Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust and Brattleboro Housing Partnerships operate Sash for All, and it's based on the traditional Sash model, serving about 300 people, half of which are kids. And it's going on year 3. And it really is kind of like a blueprint.
it kind of extends it rather than,
Yeah,
it extends the pilot.
extends the
rather than-
pilot, it continues the pilot.
So it doesn't reach Bennington at all? Or-
Not yet. If we had the 2 million, we would absolutely pay the benefit.
Okay,
That was one of the areas.
But it's just good as we keep it going with what the minimum, the conversation going is very important to me.
I just want to say that, while I do appreciate the pilot program, it's really not equitable for the state.
Listen, this is just,
And when we talk about who's
yeah,
getting
I
left out,
mean, you know, you can make it 2 million, it's just gonna, I mean, I don't know whether it matters for approach or not. So it's up to the committee. This is not, you know, I just started it.
No, this is great.
Sorry. I can, are you sure? Okay. Oh, yes, I remember now. Is Human Services amplifying this?
That's a good question. Does this go under the HHS budget?
Yes. I'm not exactly sure where Human Services is gonna land on this, but I do know that House Healthcare is, this is on their list. They're doing final voting this afternoon, but it is.
You know, if it's stupid,
But I'm not
yeah,
sure
it's
where
not, what happens is all these letters come in. And then they take them apart by
Yeah.
subject matter. And they take them apart and go deep into the budget. The budget is actually not an easy document to deal with.
Oh, I'm sure.
Even though I once did, I've already forgot. So if there is a duplication, in other words, if we say it and they say it, they'll work that out in pros.
On the middle income home ownership thing. Is that? It's is that well defined the way it's written to show that it's 2 separate programs?
Well, you know, I didn't know how to make a bracket. In the letter.
But then,
I
Why
guess
don't you
if
just
you think
put them-
it's not clear, I gotta make it clear.
Maybe
You know
just-
what I'm doing, right?
I know what you're doing, but it doesn't look to me as though it's written as it's 2 separate programs who are being funded.
Well, I had
Maybe just
the,
get rid of the space between the two.
well, then
Make
it's,
it one chunk.
should I say? I don't know, I could put. I'll just take direction here. I could just say 2 middle income programs, colon. And then put a dot for each.
Yeah.
For a total of X. Because. VHFA has requested one sum. To fund them together.
And what's
So
the name?
could you put the rental housing revolving loan fund and just get rid of the the return and paragraph, new paragraph
Yeah.
line, just put them all in one
Okay,
long chunk on the left column.
okay,
Looks like one's not funded and one's,
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Worded weird.
Okay, yeah, I didn't have a way to put a bracket.
Yeah,
No worries.
no, I see what you're saying. I'll just put a slash or some
Yeah.
a backslash.
Okay, I think that's what I'll do.
Yeah, and he's been here.
Because Anne makes it.
Yeah.
Other thoughts?
what? Just so I can write it on here, what was the base funding for VHCB? I'm not even sure what it was.
30, Polly, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Paula Major, I'm Policy Director for HCD's 36.9 for housing and conservation.
Yeah, it's not all housing.
And that's a 70-30.
It's 50-50.
This split is determined by the board. We would be looking at doing about 2/3 to housing, 1/3 to conservation in light of the urgent need in housing.
So this is general fund. All of this letter. Or it's almost entirely general fund appropriation.
Can I?
Yes.
So if we are proposing as a housing committee for 25 million above base, is it okay to ask for it to be directed to housing
Yeah, it's in our bill.
as opposed to conservation, or is it?
No, it's in our bill.
30 in our,
Oh, no.
how, like, do we say proportions or can we
No,
not do that?
I can answer that. As the legislature over the years has direct one-time general funds towards BHCD for housing, there's been separate appropriations language that we have in their bill that directs it specifically for housing. So 100% that will go.
Our bill, as it's drafted now, the one we just went through, draft 4.1, had a long paragraph that described what the money was supposed to be used for BHCB. And it's all housing with an emphasis on shelters and just developmentally disabled and blah, 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 blah.
Okay. All right.
Is that something you might be able to include in the letter? Because I know I have talked to individuals on appropriations who have asked about the split.
Oh, okay. I can do that.
That would be much appreciated.
Okay, all right.
And I'll
And
reiterate it
given-
with that.
Given that, Chair Lalonde of Judiciary confessed to me that this letter was many pages long.
10 pages?
We can
Yeah,
add a couple.
We can add
things.
some stuff. I do like the idea that something can print on two sides
Well,
of the
that's
sheet,
nice,
but
press.
actually, I think it increases. Read.
Yeah, right.
Any other, so I don't feel the need for a straw vote. I just want to know, are people comfortable with the changes that have been talked about?
Can I ask a quick question? I'm not one to usually ask for more money, so please don't think that this is an ask. Is it reasonable to say $10,000 for the universal design study with the idea that as of right now, the language is 22 members? Once again, hate to be on the spot, but I'm looking at you.
Yeah, I was actually thinking maybe we could increase it to 15,000, just.
I am shocked. Okay, 15 it is.
For 20, I mean, I don't think that, I still don't think it will cost that much to.
I don't think it will either. I think
10 seems low.
15,000 it is. Okay.
10 seemed a little
And
low.
they'll do what they
Yeah,
do.
but-
Yeah.
I mean, one of the problems. Okay, I want to ask a question of you guys. You notice in tier 3, I said, these are right at the top under where it says tier 3. These are
Mhm,
important services or studies that relate to housing production.
mhm.
What I was trying to convey is just because they're in tier 3 and there's a bunch of them doesn't mean they aren't important because some of them are so cheap, you'd be silly not to do them.
Yeah.
Any better way of saying that?
No, I think that is word, and it's so helpful because you obviously served on appropriations. You really have a grasp of how, so I think it relates it well.
Should I say something like, and many of them are relatively expensive?
No, I think you could say something like, and just personally, you could say something like, these key programs, represent a full range of housing or related infrastructure programs, because and then you could add in about cost if you want to, but just to show that we don't just start with the top tier of costs.
Do we need to call these things priorities? I mean, can these be just labeled tier 1, tier 2, tier 3?
Tier 1A,
No, I mean.
Which sounds like,
I mean,
yeah.
If there's, I mean, they want us to rank them, but,
I gotta tell them, the priority.
yeah, okay.
I can't, I don't wanna fool
Yeah, no, but just, these are all,
Yeah.
they're all important.
They're all
It's hard to- Yeah.
them. Okay, I have my marching orders. I know what to write. I will
Great.
CC everyone and I will get the letter out before 11:59 tonight.
Wait,
11, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now. We are now returning, we are going to return to the subject that we took up earlier, which is H57. I apologize to members of the committee for having reversed direction. But in the exercise of my discretion as chair, I am doing it. And saying we are going to bring this up now. And I understand there are hesitations. If you look at the bill, it's on our bills in and out of, no, it's on, excuse me,
It's posted under the minute.
under today. Yeah, exactly. So look, if you look, where the hell is it?
There you go.
Yeah, the very bottom. If you look at the very bottom, it is under Sophie's name, H57, that's the bill. And I'd like to have brief discussion, and if someone has a change they want to make in the bill, if it's minor, we can just do it. Like, for example, Joe.
so,
Minor changes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not telling you to do this. I'm just saying, by way of an example only, how's that? If you wanted to say, hey, I would really like to take out the 18-month limitation so that people wouldn't get cut out because 19, they were incredibly upset and 19 months had gone by. If you wanted to say that, you can say it, we'll get a sense of the committee, and then we could either pass it or not pass it with that change. So if you have changes like that are simple, we can do them.
So moved.
Okay, we have a proposal to take out the 18 months. How do people feel about that? Yeah,
I'm not opposed to taking out the 18 months, but I do think that we should have ultimately a limit on the amount of time that people can.
there is the
For the-
18 months.
Have. Because, for example,
Page what? Can't find it. Yeah.
I think that already.
It's on page 5 of 8,
Page
How about-
13.
within a reasonable time after.
And,
not
and
law.
it can't be within a reasonable time. It has to be demarcated. But the question, as I recall, some of the issue was that there had been a survivor who, it was like 8 years later
Oh, my God.
that they,
Well, my thing is like we're with our partially, I mean, with our expansions of definitions here. I mean, a child could be someone who had day-to-day responsibilities of 10 years ago. And that's something, I just see, I don't want to, I wouldn't want to exclude somebody. I mean, 8 years might seem wild, and how would that happen? But
so if a kid is 13 years of age at the time of the tragedy, they can't apply. If I'm reading page 2 correctly. And in 18 months, they can't apply if they turned 18. So who applies for? Or is this just the domestic partner? Is that just defining domestic partner? That's just domestic partner. Never mind.
yeah, that's just.
We can go to change. How about this? Can I just throw something out?
Yeah,
How about it said within 24 months after the death of the personnel or the date of the survivor reaching majority.
I
I think
I was just confusing something from page two that had nothing to do with it.
Oh, do you mean
the age
it's?
things.
That was just defining.
Okay.
So
So
What if it's-
on the table, on the one hand, 18 months is too short, on the other, we gotta have something.
So-
Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
I had-
So we should have something.
can we give this board the discretion to extend that
I
18
don't think
months?
they want the discretion, right? I think that's what they came in to say.
The problem is that the board is ad hoc.
Right, okay,
So that they only gather when there's been a claim
right.
made.
And if the claim is made 19 months after, do they have the discretion to,
Or if the claim is made 8 years after.
they have the discretion to say no?
I think they have,
But maybe they don't
use
wanna
their
be
discretion
on.
right now, right? That's how it operates. I don't think they have a time limit.
No, you mean the way they're currently operating?
I don't think there's a,
I think 24 months seems reasonable. I think, well, if I recall, I know it's so hard, and I want to honor the conversation from this morning. Where people were just talking about testimony, so I understand the importance of this bill, all the work that's put into it and how we got to this point. I just want to acknowledge that, and then I just want to say that we took there was a lot of conversation around previously around timeframes and what that looks like. And, and if it was a distant person, a distant relative who came back. And so the time frame serves two parts. To one, give folks time and also put a limitation on time so that someone who comes down the line, eight years later, there's that limitation because there's gotta be limitation on things. And I think there was a lot of conversation around that.
So what, with a life insurance policy, is there a time limit where you can put in for that
Table, that's for sure.
benefit if somebody passes away? Or is it ongoing?
I think
What would
that's,
the language be with a life insurance policy of how long until you can?
Usually there's a limit on when you can make, you gotta make the claim within a certain period of time.
yeah.
But of course, insurance companies will protect themselves every which way they can.
what if we word it where there's a time limit, but the board has the ability to factor extraneous circumstances?
Or
Yeah.
what's
What's the word I'm looking for?
yeah, I know what you're looking for.
Maybe it would be helpful to have Sophie here.
Well, we
Board's
can't get her here in this time, in this half hour.
There's
But what I'd like to do is go.
extenuating
is
circumstances.
Yeah, I like that.
Consider that.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'd like
If
to
somebody
go
shows up
through.
late.
Yep,
Okay,
okay.
okay, so 24 extenuating. What we're gonna do is, we're gonna go through comments. I'm gonna ask for a straw vote, not a vote, but a straw vote. Then, when Sophie gets here, we're gonna go through and tell her any change you wanna make, and then we're gonna vote. We can't vote until we've talked her through changing, right?
Correct. You would be voting on, you would have a draft to vote on.
Yeah, right, okay. What a conversation process. Anyway, it's not the big confusing. Okay, so 24 months discretion for extenuating circumstances. All right, okay. Other thoughts? Or we do a straw poll on this bill? And I fully understand people's thoughts, issues that there are. Okay, yes. Everybody's peering at me. Okay. All those who, no, we're doing a straw poll. All those who feel they would vote for this bill later this afternoon when Sophie, after we exchange, please raise your hand. Okay. We have an 11-0-0 vote, which is a straw poll. Okay, all right. Now, that was I want to congratulate.
Gold stars for everybody.
Well, there's enough little stars up there.
Yeah, if anyone needs one, they're up.
They're up there. Um. So.
And do you think will be?
Now at 12, Magali, do you have any idea what her schedule is?
It's looking like she's busy for the majority of the afternoon, but I emailed her. and
Yeah.
We'll see.
Maybe you can just go and get her out of the meeting. Okay. You can text her though.
No,
You're not allowed to text her,
I don't,
okay? All right.
it's called a boundary.
I don't believe in it.
And then
Okay.
we're leaving after four, like you won't be here after four, am I right?
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay, so if we came at 3:30 after,
Oh, no, I have
right,
a
you
three,
have a meeting.
I have a meeting at, what is it, 3:30 with the.
So if we just vote on it now. As
No,
a-
you
can't
do it.
You can't.
We have to, yeah, the draft.
Has to be the correct language.
I know, but I'm just saying if we voted on it without the changed language
That's really true.
and trust that the
Sure.
Senate
I'll be
could
right back.
change it, could
Okay.
we vote on it now?
Okay,
Hang
all
on.
right.
Do people
Okay.
feel like-
So the next, we have. I'm moving on.
Or we could do an amendment on the floor, like as a commit,
Yeah, but let's not,
not open that up.
no.
Okay.
Okay, there'll be time for that kind of shenanigans, but let's not do it with this one. Okay. We are very early, but I hate to lose the time. Golly, do we have the ability to move on even though our agenda says that you're nodding your head? You can do that. Good. Well, is Jenny here? So we have you and we have you, Polly. Do you want to testify together? We can easily pull a chair up if you'd like to. All right. Do we have an extra chair here?
Elise, can I steal yours and you can have my seat and we should all be good?
Switch.
Magali, I'm gonna share my screen.
Oh,
I have the Zoom link for you.
Doing here, like members of the committee, is this an example of just a little piece of testimony that's trying to fill in gaps that relate to our housing bill, the housing bill, that's what's going on here. And so this is a chance to just check in on a few items.
Sending a request for attention.
While we're waiting, you don't know this committee. Well, why don't we introduce ourselves? Ed,
Hi, Sadia Lamont, Lamoille, Washington District.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Burrows, and I represent Windsor One.
I'm Mary Howard and I represent Rutland District 6.
Joe Fezzo, Chittenden 20, Colchester.
I'm Debbie Dolgan. I represent St. Johnsbury, Concord and Kirby.
Tom Charlton, I represent Athens, Chester, Grafton, and Windsor.
Joe Parsons, Newberry, Thompson, and Brockton.
Leonora Dodge, 610, City of Essex. Your name.
Ashley Bartley, Fairfax in Georgia, so sorry.
and I'm Mark Tully, I represent Callis, Plainfield and Marshfield and Chair. So please state your name, whichever, both of you, and take it away.
So for the record, I'm Polly Mazur. I'm the policy director for VHCD and you all know me, but a piece of my background that's relevant to our testimony today on resident services is I came to the HCB from working on Senator Leahy's staff being the policy lead for housing and human services. So I'm not by any means an expert, but I have a deep appreciation for the complexity of this work. And I'm gonna kind of touch on where we are in the bill you're working on and give some overview and turn it over to Jenny to walk through the services coordinator program that the HCB is currently running. So I'm gonna let Jenny introduce herself first.
Go ahead, and then our Reg council is just coming over, so what we're gonna do, when she gets here, is just switch quickly and then switch back.
Happy to do that.
Okay, so-
I'm Jenny Dislip and I'm the housing director for the Housing and Conservation Board.
All right, so you invited us in to talk about resident service coordination, and I'm going to talk about some of the why of how we got there, and also talk about a little bit about the appropriations that we've received for housing. Kind of building on that conversation that you were just having on your memo and how the money comes.
Right, for members of the committee, this is an item at the top of tier 3 that's we listed as 2 million plus 400,000 for sales. Okay, go ahead.
So also in your bill, you have an appropriation for VHCB and a list of priority areas. And I know there was a conversation here last week around how does VHCB work to prioritize the needs that you as the policymakers are identifying in your communities. And the way this has worked since really the start of the pandemic, when you've been putting one-time funds towards housing at VHCB, is the appropriations committee has included a list of priority areas, and then VHCB has sought to respond to those by supporting projects that deliver those outcomes. So this is the language that has been in appropriations bills, also is mirrored in your bill with that priority area list there. And I just broke down how.
Okay.
Oh,
Now we're gonna interrupt you.
oh,
Okay. Sophie, you're on for a minute, just a minute. Okay, is that right?
We can't.
She's here, we had.
Okay, so Sophie, age 57.
Yes,
What we did is we took a straw poll
yes.
and we voted 11-0-0 to support age 57 with one change, which I need to tell you, and then we can actually vote. But we cannot vote without the physical presence of your body in the room.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
That's, yeah.
Let me call this up. On page. It's the 24-month limitation. For 18-month limitation, 30 cents.
Just take that out.
No, it's not that simple. It's now 24 months or at the discretion of the board in the case of extenuating circumstances. Is that fair? So, look up, that's fair.
Yeah.
Getting warm in here again.
Bring the toucher. So it's 24 months or at the discretion of the board in extenuating circumstances.
For a longer, it's.
Yeah.
No, you'd have to say, or a longer period in the discretion of the, in extenuating circumstances at the discretion of the board.
Due to.
Right. Due to extenuating. Okay, now that she has that, what do we do?
So we have to type it up and put it on our committee.
I think you can vote on a draft pending edits.
Could someone make a motion to,
Okay, do I have a motion to approve H 57 as amended in committee pending the production of a final draft?
Page 5.
Do I have a second?
second.
All those in favor? Oh, now we need the clerk.
Right.
Do we have a form?
I gave Mary the form. I gave Mary the form.
You want to call the roll, madam?
Just don't have to ask if there's any more discussion.
Is there any more discussion?
Yeah, can we not legislate like this going forward, please? This is a garbage process we're doing today. It's
I'll do my best.
beyond not how we should be operating.
Okay,
So
call the roll.
Representative Bartley,
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
Representative Krasno,
Yes.
Representative Burrows,
Yes.
Representative Sherlin. Charlton.
Yes.
Representative Dodge.
Yes.
Representative Howard. No, I'm sorry. Representative Dalton.
Yes.
Representative Howard votes yes. Representative Lamont.
Yes.
Representative Parsons.
Yes.
Representative Pizzo.
Yes.
Representative Mahali.
Yeah.
1100.
Okay, so you're gonna be the reporter on this. And that means that you have to send an email to Nigel letting him know that you passed out and that you will be the reporter and he'll get back in touch with you. I do want to say that I apologize, Joe and others.
All right.
No, listen, the specific lesson that I learned from this experience is that I have to be particularly, I guess we all do, particularly careful when a bill comes before us, which has a history in this committee. That's the kind of thing. And so now I know to look at that right away rather than wait, until like we're along the process. And so I'm sorry, I'm learning as I
Wasn't meant to be
go.
a shot at you. I was just,
Yeah, you're right, in my
it wasn't
opinion.
meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
We also should be taking more testimony. And this was a really good example of, there was a lot of personal testimony that could have been taken. That would have been meaningful.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Sophie, thank you for coming over and what I know was a short time. But wait, Sophie, what's our next step? Then our next step is you produce the final
I can go ahead and change, get that submitted to draft.
and then send it to drafting, and then it goes right to the clerk.
I think the clerk has to carry it over that, right?
Yeah.
Because I didn't bring it over.
It comes here.
The clerk has to be the one that hands, the clerk of the committee has to be the person. that
Okay,
hands it in.
Mary is going to be here today, but she's not here tomorrow.
It was just a training today. Imagine.
No, but she can email it.
Email it.
That's what I,
Yeah.
last year.
But she doesn't have an it to email yet.
Right.
So once she gets
this.
Yeah. Okay, all right, thank you. Great. All right, let's return to the testimony. Okay, we are now back dealing with Jenny Hislop and Colin Major on the issue of resident service testimony.
Apologies, I should have said. In the meeting.
Why do I know? When was that? When did she email that? Oh, it's on the website there.
You have a printed copy as well.
I gave you my phone. I'm talking about. No. I'm talking about what she did. Remember, I handed it to you and asked for a soft
Oh,
copy.
yes, would you like a soft copy?
Did she email it to us?
Yes.
That's funny, I don't.
I emailed to you.
Oh, you didn't?
Oh.
Okay, yeah, I'd like just a few emails.
I think I have.
Okay, all right, thank you. Are you ready?
We're back here, and so we were just explaining about how the priority is included in appropriations for one-time funding for housing helps direct VHCB's work and helps us respond to opportunities and communities and needs. And so you're seeing the outcomes in those priority areas broken down here, just for the record. I think an example is you've asked us to focus on housing for individuals eligible for the Medicaid home and a community-based services program, and folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and VHCB over the last year and a half has worked to support 4 projects around the state that serves those populations. And our partners have really leaned into doing this work, and in doing so have been, especially in helping people who are exiting homelessness, have been renting at a higher and higher rate within their portfolio to people exiting homelessness. And I know a couple of weeks ago, you heard from this resident, Hannah Pickett, who lives in Zephyr Place.
And Nino.
Yes, and the cat. And as we do this work, not only with folks exiting homelessness, but also with a wide range of service, residents with a wide range of service needs, our partners who own and manage the housing have been reporting back to VHCB that they, in order to support successful tenancies, need to really lean into providing resident service coordination. And we've been working to help stand up a program to support that work. And that's what you have in your bill, and that's what Jenny's going to talk about. So in your bill, you have an appropriation to the Agency of Human Services for $2 million for a resident services program. That was authorized in Act 181 last year. And there was a discussion last week about whether VHCB is eligible to receive direct appropriations. We can, and we do receive direct appropriations. And so I would recommend that the $2 million flow directly to VHCB for this work. The program as set up in Act 181 asks us to work with the AHS to consult with them in program design, but the appropriations, our interpretation is they can run directly to us. And in conversations we've had with AHS over the years about the need for resident service coordination, they have asked VHCB to administer those dollars because of their capacity constraints and our unique relationship with the housing and owners here. So I would suggest that the committee make that change to have the appropriation flow directly through VHCB. We also see and hear about the wonderful work that Cathedral Square is doing with SASH for All that was discussed an hour ago here, and the pilot program to support the Brattleboro housing entities, and to really build that as a proof of concept in the hopes that it can best serve people around the state. They just have to start somewhere, which is why you don't see starting with a statewide pilot when funds don't allow that.
Holly, I just want to clarify so we get it, I get it clear and can give direction to our legislative council. Is the current draft correctly stated or incorrectly stated as to who it goes through? This is the 2 million.
Yeah, incorrectly, or I would suggest a change. So the current draft is bolded here. This is Act 181 is for reference last year's language. The bolded is in your current draft. And the resident service program that's administered by VHCB is under an appropriations for AHS. I would suggest moving that out and having it be an appropriations to VHCB for that work.
Right, okay. Okay, go ahead. I do have a question which we'll get to about the larger appropriation to VHCB. We'll get to that. Okay.
Happy to answer that. So this just summarizes those comments on your bill. And I'm happy to provide draft language with that change if that's helpful. I turn it over to Jenny.
That would be helpful, and send it to Cameron.
Yeah.
So as Polly described in our work with the nonprofit housing network, we have really consistently and over a long period of time heard about this deep unmet need for support and services for residents.
And it's especially true in portfolios where there are a high number of vulnerable Vermonters being served. So we were very fortunate to receive a targeted, one-time, non-refundable $3 million grant from philanthropists who wanted to provide us with an initial boost to help meet the need. And so that comes in the form, again, of a $3 million award, $1 million per year to expand access to resident service coordination by providing funding for 10 positions a year around the state. The nonprofit housing network in Vermont is made up of community-based organizations that serve every area of the state, and they know the needs of their communities and their residents. And the organizations you see on this slide, the ones in bold, are regional nonprofits who receive annual operating assistance and support from BHCB. The donor here was looking to invest in organizations whose work is already under routine review by BHCB and in whom they could place a high degree of trust. We know that I think we all know that 10 positions is not enough to address the need for services in Vermont, but it's enough to have an impact, and we want to maximize the impact by partnering with these entities. So before I just dive into program details, I wanted to just give you a little bit of context for how we got here. Since you likely know, the board is not typically and traditionally in the business of funding services, but we've kind of found ourselves at a unique crossroads because of a number of factors. Even before the pandemic, we knew that our service delivery system was complex and that many residents in affordable housing were challenged to access services, especially in times of crisis that threaten their tenancies. So working in partnership with VHFA, we engaged with the Corporation for Supportive Housing to analyze the issue and to issue a report for us. And their work confirmed what we already, I think, all know to be true, that our service system is complicated, it's challenged by labor shortages, and that residents in affordable housing need help accessing those services, and that there was a need for funding to support a response. And that was in 2019, before the pandemic. Along came the pandemic and exacerbated that issue. It resulted in on the positive side of things, substantial capital that was targeted to build housing for very vulnerable populations. But it also increased the state's labor challenges. And at the same time, the opiate crisis was really continuing to take off. So thinking back to that map slide that you saw, these core partners that were on that slide manage a combined rental portfolio of about 6,500 units. And of those units, at least 25% are occupied by people who previously experienced homelessness. And I'm sharing that with you not because every person who has experienced homelessness needs services, but instead because it's a measurement of just one of a variety of indicators of a high number of vulnerable folks being served by affordable housing. And I think it's also a call for all of us to do everything that we can to ensure that they can retain their housing after everything they've gone through to get it. So in our ongoing work with the housing EDs, we heard that many of their most vulnerable tenants were having deepening challenges accessing services. They were falling behind in their rent. They were experiencing crises that were threatening their tenancies. And the last thing that any of these organizations want to do is be in a position of having to evict a tenant. So to that end, we worked with this philanthropist to obtain the award, which required that our partners engage in a sustained planning process that began last April. And they all agreed to work together to create a framework of interventions and outcomes that would be tracked using a common software database. Evernorth, a partner of ours, agreed to coordinate that data collection and all of the reporting, and they've been just a tremendous help in the process. All of the sites will use similar approaches. They will be using evidence-based practices that include trauma-informed care, motivational interviewing, and assertive engagement. And all of the service coordinators will meet together once a month to discuss best practices and strategies, and will measure outcomes and interventions and report to the philanthropist on an annual basis. So this philanthropist has two goals. They wanted to provide some immediate help, but they also want to make sure that there is a platform for measuring outcomes and reporting on those outcomes. And this is, just to be clear, place-based services. So it's services in the housing.
It's what I like to think of as an open door model. A tenant can stop in for one-time support, or they can work with a coordinator for a longer period of time to access services to meet their needs. It could be to address food security, mental health care, transportation, what have you. The coordinator can also do community building activities. So that would be things like a potluck or a barbecue. And we think of those things as preventive steps to help strengthen ties among neighbors. It's not intended to duplicate any other services, and it's instead intended to ensure access, equitable access to services for folks who live in the housing. And the other thing I will say is that it is a non-renewable funding source for us. So it is 3 years, and then we're done with it. So in terms of progress to date, this philanthropist approved our implementation plan in November. Our board made awards in December, and I'm happy to report about 8 weeks later that 9 out of the 10 positions are filled already. And work is underway. So this is a very lean program. The vast majority of the funding to date has gone to cover direct costs, staffing costs, with the remainder going for software, training, and consulting. In terms of next steps, the partners will continue to work to onboard the support from VHCB, training the new coordinators, and the peer network will continue monthly gatherings, and we will all collectively begin to obtain data on the outcomes, probably beginning this summer. And each of the executive directors has, I would just like to acknowledge, contributed a tremendous amount of time and care in working collectively to design a program that can meet regional needs, but also be part of a statewide initiative. So I just want to express my appreciation to them. And then at the end of this summer, when they report their initial outcomes to us, they also will seek funding from us for their second year of operations. And we're looking forward to learning more and we work alongside them. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have or talk about any particular areas of the program's implementation that are of interest.
Members of the committee? I have a couple of questions but actually they really go to the general appropriation to the HCB. One is on the list. Let's go back to the big language. Yeah. Yeah. Provide support, enhance capacity. It's really up to your discretion, sort of like how you do this, right? How do you feel about adding individuals with intellectual disabilities to the list?
They are captured under the Medicaid funded home and community-based services language that was suggested by.
Okay, good. The second is we've received actually, Susan Aronoff is here, sitting here. Susan, you want to introduce yourself for the record?
Good afternoon, committee. My name is Susan Aronoff. I'm the Senior Policy Analyst and Planner for the Vermont Developmental Disabilities Council. I'm a state employee based in the Agency of Human Services.
Thank you. I don't know if we'll need you to pipe up, but just in case. There was a request for a limited service position to provide technical assistance to housing developers seeking to identify and align financing for service-enriched housing. Is this the kind of thing that's, I mean, you guys have a lot of freedom within your whatever the sum is that you get, but do you need express language to help you do this? Is it something you want to do? Or is it fine with that, or do you need more direction to do that?
So we really see this as, this language is directing predominantly towards the work the board does to get capital out the door to projects. And there is a broad technical or broad enhanced capacity mandate here as well. What this specific language and thought around the position would do is that we see that these projects are increasingly complex and need many different development sources to be woven together and connections with service providers made as well. And so this would just allow these more complex projects to move forward more smoothly.
But do you need authority to do that, or just, in other words, does VNCV have the authority to just hire whoever it needs to carry out what's there?
Yes, we do. It would, if this was embedded within that 40 million, it would just be more funding that is going towards technical assistance rather than into as capital.
Just to make sure, let me put it another way. The various factors that will determine what that number is at the top, which is not going to be 40 million, whatever it is, those factors will include all kinds of extraneous issues about how much money there is, which the Appropriations Committee will have to decide. It's not like if they decide that it's 25 million, there'll be 25,200,000. They won't add that position. It'll just be buried there. Is it any advantage to you to include extra language, or should we just let it be?
You could certainly achieve the goal by having it within this language.
Leaving, okay, thank you. I think, are there other questions for members of the committee? Yes.
I don't know if you can answer this question. But how many people and how much money does Medicaid funded home and community-based services represent?
Afraid I'm not the right person to answer that question.
Are you? Who would be able to? If we wanted it, is it something you could get hold of?
I would suggest you either having Susan kind of testify that or the Department of Aging and Independent Living that.
Susan, do you know the answer?
Excuse me, Representative Burrows, do you want to know how many people currently receive Medicaid home and community-based services in Vermont?
What I really want to know is how many people are at risk of losing their Medicaid-based home and community-based services.
Because of the budget that was just discussed tonight?
Yeah.
In Vermont, there are a third of Vermonters receive their healthcare through Medicaid. Of that number, some of the services are mandatory, like nursing homes and primary care probably won't be cut.
Right.
But the 5,000 who receive home and community-based services for intellectual or developmental disability, those community-based services are all optional, and they are most likely to be cut first because they're optional.
So around 5,000.
Just in the intellectual and developmental disability, home and community-based services in Vermont also covers seniors and people with physical disabilities through choices for care. People with brain injuries, people with psychiatric disabilities through our Department of Mental Health has several home and community-based programs. It also covers our school-based services for students with disabilities. It covers a wide swath of what are considered optional services.
Okay. Thank you.
Outside of traditional Medicaid, and Vermont, I'll say, has led the country in expanding Medicaid to put it to some very ingenious use of our new waivers expected to use Medicaid for the first time in the country to support rent. For unhoused people. We'll see what happens.
Yes. Thank you.
Other questions of the committee has for our witnesses? Could you send this material to Cameron? So you have.
Certainly can, and Magali, I updated the presentation based on today's current draft of the bill, so I'll get an updated version to you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Ellen is not scheduled to be here until 2:30.
Right.
Would you like to come off break?
How would everybody like a break where they can walk out and get into a cooler atmosphere? Open the door and maybe even a window just a little.